The Old West wasn't just about dusty trails, lawless towns, and legendary duels. It was also an era defined by iron and fire. From the saloons of Dodge City to the deserts of Arizona, revolvers weren't just weapons. They were symbols of survival, power, and reputation. Some of these six-shooters became so feared for their sheer stopping power and ruthless efficiency that their names still echo through history today. In this video, we're diving into the top 10 most brutal revolvers ever forged in the American Old West. The handgun that shaped legends, ended feuds, and wrote the story of the frontier in gunpowder and steel.
Colt 1877 Thunderer. The Colt Model 1877 was a groundbreaking double-action revolver produced by Colt's Patent Firearms Manufacturing Company from January 1877 until 1909, with a total of 166,849 units leaving the factory. It was designed by William Mason, one of the key minds behind the legendary Colt Single-Action Army of 1873, and represented Colt's first major step into the world of double-action handguns. As such, the M1877 holds a special place in firearms history as the first successful double-action cartridge revolver manufactured in the United States. Buyers could choose between two standard finishes, a nickel-plated version or a blued barrel and cylinder paired with a case-colored frame. The revolver was produced in a range of barrel lengths from 2.5 inches up to 7.5 inches, and customers could order it with or without an ejector rod in housing. The shorter, ejectorless models were promoted as shopkeepers' specials, designed for discreet carry and easy concealment, a practical option for those who needed a reliable sidearm without drawing attention. Interestingly, the well-known nicknames Lightning and Thunderer were not official Colt designations. They were created by Benjamin Kittredge, one of Colt's most influential distributors, who also coined the famous name Peacemaker for the Single-Action Army. Kittredge was behind other marketing terms too, such as Omnipotent for the Colt M1878 and various nicknames for the new line revolver models. The early double-action system of the Colt M1877 was considered both complex and fragile, which often made the revolver prone to mechanical issues, particularly with its self-cocking function. Because of this, it quickly gained an unflattering reputation among gunsmiths and collectors, who referred to it as the watchmaker's nightmare, due to the delicate internal parts and the difficulty of repairs. Even modern firearm experts regard its internal design as problematic. Gun Digest famously described it as the worst double-action trigger mechanism ever made. One of the most frequent issues was the trigger spring, which tended to fail over time, leaving the revolver to function only in single-action mode. In terms of appearance, the M1877 closely resembled the Colt Single-Action Army, but it was built on a smaller and more compact frame. Early versions were fitted with checkered rosewood grips, while most later models featured hard rubber grips shaped in the distinctive bird's head style. Throughout its production life, the M1877 was not designed to handle smokeless powder cartridges. Late production boxes even included a printed warning stating, "Not adapted for smokeless powder." Because of this, all M1877 revolvers are considered black powder firearms and should be treated accordingly by collectors and historians. Despite its mechanical quirks, the M1877 earned a place in history thanks to several notable figures. It was the favored sidearm of Jerome Caminada, the renowned Victorian-era detective and head of the Criminal Investigation Department in Manchester, England. It was also known to be carried by John Wesley Hardin, one of the Old West's most talked-about figures, who used both the Lightning and Thunderer versions. The Thunderer model in particular was closely associated with Billy the Kid, who continued to carry it late into his life. Likewise, Doc Holliday was known for keeping a nickel-plated Thunderer tucked in his waistband, often paired with his nickel-plated Colt single-action Army, both of which were fitted with ivory or pearl grips. Colt 1860 Army. The Colt Army Model 1860 was a cap-and-ball, 44 caliber single-action revolver produced by Colt's Manufacturing Company and widely used during the American Civil War. It served as a standard-issue sidearm for a wide range of military branches, including cavalry, infantry, artillery units, and even naval forces. Built on the same frame as the .36 caliber Colt 1851 Navy, the 1860 Army featured a relieved frame to accommodate a rebated cylinder, allowing it to be chambered for the larger .44 caliber round. Another design distinction was its shorter forcing cone, which made space for a longer cylinder. Additionally, the revolver included a creeping loading lever, an innovation first introduced on the Colt 1855 sidehammer model. Between 1860 and 1873, over 200,000 units were manufactured. The U.S. government was the largest purchaser, acquiring more than 129,000 revolvers for military use. The firearm was a single-action, six-shot design and was considered effective at ranges between 75 and 100 yards, where its fixed sights were typically set. The rear sight was a simple notch in the hammer, visible only when the hammer was fully cocked. The Colt 1860 Army became the most widely used revolver of the Civil War. It employed a six-chambered rotating cylinder and fired either a .454-inch 11.5 millimeter lead ball or a conical tip projectile. These were typically propelled by a 30-grain charge of black powder, ignited by a percussion cap, a small copper primer filled with fulminate of mercury, which triggered ignition when struck by the hammer. Depending on the powder load, projectiles left the barrel at approximately 900 feet per second, 274 meters per second. Remington New Army, 1858. The Remington Beals model revolvers, along with their later variants, were percussion revolvers produced by Eliphalet Remington & Sons in .31 pocket, .36 Navy, and .44 Army calibers. They played an important role during the American Civil War and marked the beginning of a long and successful series of medium and large frame handguns from the Remington Company. These revolvers are often, though incorrectly, referred to as the Model 1858 because of the patent date inscribed on the barrels of later new model versions, patented September 14, 1858. However, mass production did not actually begin until 1861, just as the Civil War was breaking out. Initially, Remington revolvers were issued only as a secondary sidearm to supplement the Union Army's primary handgun, the Colt 1860 Army. That changed dramatically after a fire at the Colt factory in 1864 temporarily halted production, prompting the U.S. government to place large orders for Remington revolvers to meet wartime demand. In the autumn of 1861, Samuel Remington personally traveled to Washington, D.C. to negotiate with federal officials, offering his revolvers to the government for $15 each, a full $10 less than Colt's price for its .44 caliber models. Despite this competitive offer, by March 1862, the Army had only received 7,250 revolvers in .36 caliber and 850 Beals revolvers in .44 caliber, all purchased at the $15 price point. Following the war, Remington's revolvers continued to see widespread use in the American West, both in their original percussion form and in metallic cartridge conversions. Their reputation extended far beyond U.S. borders, as these revolvers were also carried and appreciated around the world for their reliability and solid construction. Remington 1875. The Remington Model 1875 Single-Action Army, also known as the Improved Army or Frontier Army, was a revolver manufactured by E. Remington & Sons. It was inspired by the highly regarded Remington New Model Army 1858, sharing many of its key features, such as overall size, external design, and the removable cylinder. The primary difference between the new 1875 model and its 1858 predecessor was the introduction of a bored-through cylinder, which allowed it to use metallic cartridges rather than traditional percussion caps and loose powder. With this innovation, Remington officially entered the cartridge revolver market in 1875, launching a large-frame, military-style sidearm designed to compete directly with the iconic Colt Peacemaker. The revolver's robust construction and dependable performance quickly earned the respect of both civilian users and lawmen throughout the American frontier. Building on the success of the 1875, Remington went on to produce two additional models, the Model 1888 and the Model 1890, both of which followed the same design philosophy. Today, the legacy of the 1875 lives on through modern reproductions. Companies like Uberti manufacture faithful recreations of the original revolvers, including the 1875 Outlaw, Frontier, and Police models. These reproductions are chambered for modern smokeless powder cartridges, such as the .357 Magnum, while retaining the authentic look, balance, and handling of the original Old West firearms. Cimarron Firearms also offers a version built to its own specifications by Uberti, combining classic 19th century aesthetics with contemporary metallurgy and safety standards. Colt Frontier 6-shooter. The Colt Frontier, often known as the Frontier 6-shooter, was a variation of the famous Colt 1873 Model P revolver. Unlike the standard .45 Colt version, known as the single-action Army, this model was chambered for the .4440 Winchester cartridge, making it fully compatible with the widely popular Winchester Model 1873 repeating rifle. This compatibility offered a major advantage to users in the American West, as they could carry one type of ammunition for both their handgun and rifle. A practical solution that was especially valued by those living or traveling far from supply points. Production of the Model P in .4440 began in 1877, and the revolver officially carried the name Colt Frontier 6-shooter, which was originally acid-etched on the left side of the barrel. After 1889, this marking was roll-stamped, and in 1919, the cartridge designation .4440 was added. Later, even Colt M1878 double-action Army models carried the same inscription when chambered for .44 WCF, .4440 Winchester. The Bisley model of 1895 was the last Colt revolver to bear the Frontier 6-shooter title. A Colt Frontier 6-shooter paired with a Winchester model 1873 chambered in .4440 WCF became one of the most iconic and widely carried combinations in the Old West. Historical accounts note that even two mounted participants at the gunfight at the OK Corral were armed with this pairing. Interestingly, Winchester never produced the Model 1873 and .45 Colt, likely to avoid direct competition with Colt's revolvers. As the Frontier era faded, Winchester introduced the Model 1892, which continued the tradition by offering chamberings not only in .4440, but also in .3840 in .32-20. This continued to allow shooters the same convenience of shared ammunition between their rifles and revolvers, a feature that remained highly valued well into the later decades of the 19th century. Colt 1902 Philippine. The Colt Model 1902 was a semi-automatic pistol designed by renowned American firearms innovator John Browning and manufactured by Colt's Patent Firearms Manufacturing Company in the early 20th century. Rather than being an entirely new creation, the Model 1902 represented a refined evolution of Browning's earlier Model 19. Sharing much of its design but introducing a series of practical improvements. From this design, Colt developed three closely related pistols using the same operating system and cartridge: the 1902 Sporting Model, the 1902 Military Model, and the 1903 Pocket Hammer Model. The sporting model was so similar to the original 1900 that Colt even continued the serial numbering from its predecessor. The 1902 military model introduced several changes to improve handling and capacity. It featured a longer and square grip frame, which allowed for one additional cartridge in the magazine. The 1903 pocket hammer model, on the other hand, was designed for more compact carry with a shorter barrel and slide, but retaining the grip frame of the sporting version. This lineage of designs ultimately led to the development of the Colt model 1905, chambered for the .45 ACP cartridge. Although based on the same mechanical principles, the 1905 received its own serial number range, marking another important step in Colt's evolution of semi-automatic handguns. Colt Single Action Army. The Colt Single Action Army, often referred to as the SAA, Model P, Peacemaker, or simply the M1873, is one of the most iconic single-action revolvers in American history. It was designed by Colt's Patent Firearms Manufacturing Company, now known as Colt's Manufacturing Company, specifically for the U.S. government service revolver trials of 1872. The design was approved and adopted as the standard issue sidearm of the U.S. Army from 1873 until 1892. Since its introduction, the Colt SAA has been produced in more than 30 different calibers and offered with a variety of barrel lengths. Despite these variations, the revolver's overall appearance has remained virtually unchanged since its debut. Production was discontinued twice over the decades, but strong public demand brought it back both times. Nicknamed the Peacemaker, the revolver became deeply woven into the fabric of American frontier history. Its widespread use among ranchers, lawmen, and frontier figures made it a symbol of the Old West era. Today, the Colt SAA is primarily purchased by collectors, historians, and historical reenactors, and its classic design has inspired countless revolver models from other manufacturers. The original version issued to the U.S. Cavalry featured a 7.5-inch barrel and measured approximately 13 inches overall. Together with the Smith & Wesson American, 1870, and the Model 3 Schofield, 1875, the Colt SAA replaced the older Colt 1860 Army percussion revolver in military service. The Colt quickly gained favor over its competitors and remained the primary U.S. military revolver until 1892, when it was superseded by the .38 long Colt Model 1892, a double-action revolver with a swing-out cylinder. By the end of 1874, production had reached serial number 16,000, with about 12,500 revolvers chambered in 45 Colt entering government service. The remaining units were sold to the civilian market, where the Peacemaker's popularity continued to grow well beyond its military career. The Lamat revolver. The Lamat revolver was a distinctive .4, .2, or .36 caliber, cap-and-ball black powder sidearm created by Jean-Alexandre Lamat of France. What set it apart from other revolvers of the era was its unique secondary smoothbore barrel, ranging from 16 to 20 gauge, which could discharge buckshot, an innovative feature that offered greater versatility on the battlefield. The revolver was used by the Confederate States of America's armed forces during the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, and later saw service with the Army of the Government of National Defense in the Franco-Prussian War. Lamat's original goal was to market the firearm as a primary sidearm for cavalry units, dragoons, and other mounted troops who would benefit from its dual-function design. In April 1859, Lamat formed a business partnership with PGT Beauregard, then a major in the U.S. Army. Beauregard, a close relative of Lamat, later became one of the first U.S. officers to resign his commission and join the Confederacy. With the outbreak of war, Lamat secured a Confederate contract for 5,000 revolvers. Because the South lacked the industrial capacity to produce them domestically, plans were made to manufacture the weapons in Europe and import them to the Confederacy. Despite the challenges posed by the Union naval blockade, Confederate agents managed to transport several shipments of Lamat revolvers into the South. Historians estimate that approximately 2,500 units successfully reached Confederate forces, where they were prized for their distinctive design and multi-purpose capability. Colt Dragoon revolver. The Colt Model 1848 Percussion Army Revolver was a .44 caliber handgun created by Samuel Colt specifically for the U.S. Army's Regiment of Mounted Rifles. It was also supplied to the Army's Dragoon regiments, who required a reliable sidearm for mounted service. The design of the Model 1848 was intended to address several issues found in the earlier Colt Walker revolver, which, while powerful, was heavy and less practical for field use. Although the Dragoon revolver entered production after the Mexican-American War, it gained significant popularity among civilian users during the 1850s and 1860s, and was also carried during the American Civil War. The Colt Dragoon series underwent multiple design revisions between 1847 and 1860, when it was eventually succeeded by the Colt Model 1860 Army Revolver. Many of the key design advancements made by Colt over the years were applied not only to the Dragoon models, but also to the company's smaller revolvers. In total, 19,800 Dragoon revolvers, including 1,100 Colt Walkers, were produced between 1847 and 1860. An additional 750 units were manufactured in a separate serial range specifically for the British market. For collectors and historians, the Dragoon series is typically classified into three main types, with one recognized transitional model that bridges design changes between them. Colt Walker. The Colt Walker, also known simply as the Walker Colt, was a single-action revolver featuring a 6-shot revolving cylinder loaded with black powder behind .44 caliber lead projectiles. It was designed in 1846 by Samuel Colt, one of America's most influential firearm inventors, based on the specifications provided by Captain Samuel Hamilton Walker of the Texas Rangers. The project was a collaboration between Walker and Colt in the mid-1840s, evolving from the earlier Colt Patterson design. Captain Walker sought a sidearm with exceptional stopping power at close range, something significantly more powerful than the standard-issue pistols of the time. He personally carried 2 of these revolvers during the Mexican-American War, though he was killed in battle in 1847, the same year his namesake firearm entered service. Production of the Colt Walker was extremely limited. Only 1,100 units were manufactured, 1,000 under a military contract and 100 for the civilian market. As a result, original examples are exceptionally rare and highly sought after by collectors. On October 9, 2008, a Walker passed down from a Mexican war veteran sold at auction for $920,000. A decade later, in July 2018, a Model 1847 Colt Walker, complete with its original case, set a new record when it sold for $1.84 million, becoming the most expensive single firearm ever auctioned. Walker's experience with the earlier Patterson holster pistol, a 5-shot .36 caliber revolver widely purchased by the Republic of Texas, influenced his collaboration with Colt. By 1847, as a captain in the United States Mounted Rifles, Walker requested a larger, more capable revolver to replace the single-shot Model 1842 percussion pistols. The result was a .44 to .45 caliber revolver designed to be carried in saddle-mounted holsters, suited to mounted troops and frontier service. The Colt Walker was used both during the Mexican-American War and on the Texas frontier, where it gained a reputation for its formidable performance. Medical officer John Rip Ford, who acquired 2 examples upon their arrival in Veracruz, provided some of the most detailed contemporary accounts of the revolver's capabilities. He observed that the Walker could project a round as far, and with as much or more force, as the .54 caliber Mississippi rifle, an impressive feat for a handgun of its time. Unlike many later military sidearms, the Colt Walker remained effective at ranges up to 100 yards, making it one of the most powerful and influential revolvers of the mid-19th century. From the smoke-filled streets of frontier towns to the dusty trails where legends were born, these revolvers weren't just tools. They were the heartbeat of the American West. Each one tells a story of survival, ambition, and grit in a world where a man's sidearm could mean the difference between life and death. Whether wielded by lawmen seeking justice or outlaws chasing fortune, these iconic six-shooters shaped the destiny of an entire era, and their legacy still echoes today.
Please like and share if you find the video content interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss the upcoming interesting videos. Thanks for watching.